My neighbor showed up at my door at 2 a.m., covered in blood. He grabbed my arm and said, "Hide me. They will harm us both if they find me here." I asked him who was after him. He looked toward the flashing lights outside and whispered, "The cops out there are not real." Before I could respond, someone started breaking down my front door. My name is Ren Holloway. I am 28 years old. I work as a freelance graphic designer from my small rental house in a quiet town in Oregon. I moved here 3 years ago because I wanted peace. I wanted to feel safe. I wanted to live somewhere nothing bad ever happened. For 3 years, I got exactly what I wanted. My little house sat on a dead-end street with only 6 other homes. Tall pine trees surrounded the neighborhood like a protective wall. The only sounds at night were owls and wind through the branches. I knew my neighbors by sight, but not much more. We waved when we saw each other. We kept to ourselves. That was the way I liked it. My closest family is my younger brother Theo. He lives 2 hours away in Eugene. We talk every Sunday without fail. He is the kind of brother who would drive through the night if I needed him. Our parents retired to Arizona a few years ago, so Theo and I look out for each other. He worries about me living alone in such an isolated place. I always told him there was nothing to worry about. I was wrong. The neighbor who showed up bleeding on my doorstep was named Declan Marsh. He moved into the house next to mine about 8 months ago. I did not know much about him. He was 34 years old. He had dark hair and serious eyes. He worked from home doing something with computers. He drove a dark blue truck that he kept very clean. In 8 months of living next door to each other, we had maybe 10 conversations total. He helped me carry groceries once when it was raining. He lent me a shovel when mine broke. He was polite and quiet and kept his distance. I never had any reason to think about him much at all. That changed the night he knocked on my door with blood running down his face and terror in his eyes. I remember everything about that moment. The cold air hitting my skin when I opened the door. The smell of copper from the blood on his shirt. The way his hands were shaking when he grabbed my arm. The way his voice cracked when he begged me to let him inside. "Please, Ren. There is no time to explain. Just let me in." I should have called the police. That is what any normal person would do. A bleeding man shows up at your door in the middle of the night, and you call for help. You do not invite danger into your home. But something in his eyes stopped me. He was not just scared. He was desperate. He looked like a man who had nowhere else to go. Like I was his last hope. So I let him in. He stumbled past me, and I closed the door behind him. He moved away from the windows immediately, pressing himself against the wall where no one could see him from outside. His breathing was fast and shallow. Blood was dripping onto my hardwood floor. "Declan, what happened to you?" I asked. "Who did this?" Before he could answer, I saw the flashing lights, red and blue, pulling up right in front of my house. 2 police cars, 4 officers stepping out with flashlights and hands on their weapons. Relief washed over me. The police were here. Whatever trouble Declan was in, the authorities would handle it. I reached for the door to let them know he was inside and that he needed medical attention. Declan grabbed my wrist so hard it hurt. "Do not open that door," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Those are not real cops. If you let them in, they will kill us both." The officers were walking toward my porch. Their flashlights swept across my windows. One of them pounded on my door and announced himself. "Police, open up. We know he is in there." I looked at Declan. I looked at the door. I had seconds to decide who to trust. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And drop a comment telling me where you are watching from right now. I love connecting with all of you. Now let me take you back to before this nightmare began. To understand how I ended up hiding in my own house from men who claimed to be police, I need to tell you about my life before that night. I moved to Oregon 3 years ago to escape, not from danger or violence, just from the chaos of city life and a relationship that had drained everything out of me. I was living in Portland, working at a busy design agency, dating a man who made me feel smaller every day. When that relationship finally ended, I knew I needed a fresh start, somewhere quiet. I found this little town almost by accident. I was driving through the area visiting a friend, and I saw a rental sign in front of a small blue house on a dead-end street. The house was nothing special. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with old appliances and counters that had seen better days. But it had a big backyard that led into the woods and a front porch where I could drink my coffee in the mornings. It felt safe. It felt hidden. It felt like exactly what I needed. I took the lease that same week and never looked back. My work as a freelance graphic designer meant I could live anywhere with an internet connection. I built a small client base over the years, enough to pay my bills and save a little each month. I was not rich, but I was comfortable. More importantly, I was free. No boss looking over my shoulder. No office politics. No commute through traffic that made me want to scream. I kept my life simple on purpose. I had a few friends in town, but I was not close to any of them. I talked to my brother Theo every week. I called my parents in Arizona once a month. I read books and watched movies and took long walks through the woods behind my house. I was alone most of the time, and I was happy that way. My neighbors were the same kind of people. Quiet, private, friendly enough to wave, but not the type to show up uninvited. There was an older couple at the end of the street who had lived there for 30 years. A young family with 2 kids who kept to themselves. A woman around my age who worked as a nurse and was rarely home. And then there was Declan. He moved in 8 months before that terrible night. I remember watching the moving truck pull up and wondering what kind of person would choose this isolated little street. He did not have much furniture. Just the basics. A bed, a desk, a couch, some boxes. He did everything himself without asking for help from anyone. The first time we spoke was about a week after he moved in. I was checking my mailbox, and he was doing the same. He introduced himself, shook my hand, and said he hoped he would not be a bother. I told him the neighborhood was quiet, and he would fit right in. He smiled, but the smile did not quite reach his eyes. There was something guarded about him. Something closed off. Over the next 8 months, I learned almost nothing about him. He worked from home. He did not have visitors. He drove his truck to the grocery store once a week and to the post office every few days. He kept his lawn neat and his house dark. If I had to describe him to someone, I would say he seemed like a man who wanted to disappear. I never thought much about it. Some people are private. Some people have reasons to keep their distance. I respected that because I was the same way. The night everything changed started like any other night. I worked late on a project for a client. I made myself a cup of tea around midnight and watched an episode of my favorite cooking show. I checked the locks on all my doors the way I always did. I turned off the lights and went to bed feeling safe and comfortable in my routine. Before I fell asleep, I noticed something strange. Headlights passed slowly down my street. This was unusual because the street was a dead end. No one drove down here unless they lived here. I watched the lights move past my window and disappear around the bend. I told myself it was probably someone who made a wrong turn, someone looking for a different address. I closed my eyes and pushed the thought away. 2 hours later, the pounding on my door woke me from a dead sleep, and my quiet, safe little life came crashing down around me. I stumbled out of bed with my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. No one had ever knocked on my door in the middle of the night. Not once in 3 years of living here. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and moved slowly toward the front of the house. Every step felt heavy with fear. Through the peephole, I saw Declan. He was leaning against the doorframe like he could barely stand. His shirt was torn open at the collar. There was blood on his face, smeared across his forehead and running down the side of his cheek. His hands were pressed against his ribs, and they were covered in red. Too, he looked like someone had beaten him badly. I opened the door without thinking. Whatever had happened to him, he needed help. He stumbled inside, and I caught his arm to keep him from falling. He was heavier than I expected, and his whole body was shaking. "Declan, what happened?" I asked. "Who did this to you? I need to call an ambulance." "No," he said sharply. His voice was strained with pain. "Do not call anyone. Please, just close the door and lock it." I closed the door and locked it like he asked. I did not know why I was listening to him. I should have called 911 immediately, but there was something in his voice that made me hesitate. He was not just hurt, he was terrified. "You need to hide me," he said. He was looking around my living room like he was searching for somewhere to disappear. "They are coming. They are right behind me. If they find me here, they will hurt you too." Who is coming? I demanded. Declan, you have to tell me what is going on. Before he could answer, I saw the flashing lights through my front window, red and blue, bright and unmistakable. 2 police cars had pulled up in front of my house. Officers were stepping out with flashlights in their hands. Relief flooded through my body. The police were here. Whatever was happening, they would take care of it. I moved toward the door to let them know Declan was inside and needed medical attention. But Declan grabbed my wrist and pulled me back. His grip was so tight it hurt. Do not open that door, he whispered. Those are not real cops. I stared at him like he was crazy. What are you talking about? Of course they are real cops. Look at them. They have uniforms. They have cars. They have badges. Anyone can get a uniform, Declan said. His eyes were locked on mine with desperate intensity. Anyone can buy a used police car at auction. Those men are not here to help you. They are here to kill me. And if they find out you saw them, they will kill you too. One of the officers pounded on my door. His voice was loud and commanding. Police, open up. We are looking for a dangerous suspect. We have reason to believe he entered this residence. I looked at Declan. I looked at the door. My mind was racing with confusion and fear. Everything I knew told me to trust the police. Everything I had been taught my whole life said that when you are in danger, you call the authorities and they protect you. But Declan's fear was real. I could see it in his eyes. I could feel it in the way his hand trembled against my wrist. This was not a man playing games or making up stories. He believed with absolute certainty that the men outside would kill us both. The pounding on the door grew louder. Open the door now, the officer shouted. If you do not comply, we will be forced to enter. Please, Declan begged. His voice cracked. Please trust me. I know you have no reason to, but I'm telling you the truth. If you open that door, we are both dead. The door shook in its frame as someone threw their weight against it. The wood groaned. The lock rattled. They were not waiting for permission anymore. I had seconds to make a choice. Trust the men with badges who were breaking down my door, or trust the bleeding stranger standing in my living room. One of them was lying to me. One of them wanted to hurt me, and if I chose wrong, I would not live to regret it. Something felt wrong. I could not explain it, but my gut was screaming at me to listen. Real police officers do not break down doors without warrants. Real police officers do not refuse to wait while you verify their identity. Real police officers do not threaten innocent people in the middle of the night. I made my decision in a split second. I grabbed Declan's arm and pulled him away from the front door. Come with me, I whispered. There is a back door through the laundry room. We moved quickly through the dark house. I did not turn on any lights because I did not want them to see which direction we were going. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure the men outside could hear it. Every step felt like it took forever. Every second felt like our last. As we moved, Declan started talking in short, broken sentences. He was trying to explain while struggling to breathe through the pain in his ribs. I used to be a forensic accountant, he said. I worked for a private firm that handled financial investigations. 6 months ago, I found something I was not supposed to find. Money being moved through shell companies. Millions of dollars connected to a drug trafficking operation. The people involved were not just criminals. They were cops, local officials, people with power and badges who were supposed to protect this community. We reached the laundry room. I could hear the front door splintering behind us. They were almost inside. I reported everything to the FBI, Declan continued. They put me in a kind of informal witness protection while they built their case. I moved here because it was small and quiet, and no one would think to look for me. But someone leaked my location. Someone on the inside told them where I was hiding. I opened the back door slowly, trying not to make any noise. The cold night air hit my face. My backyard was dark, and beyond it were the woods, thick trees and hiking trails that I had walked 100 times. If we could get into those woods, we might have a chance. The men breaking into your house right now work for the people I exposed, Declan said. They are wearing uniforms, but they are not real police. They are here to silence me. And now that you have seen them, you are a witness too. I understood then why he was so afraid. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not something that could be explained away. These men had come to kill him, and they would kill me too if it meant protecting their secrets. I grabbed my phone and typed a quick message to my brother Theo. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hit the right letters. I sent him my location and wrote the words, "Call FBI," not local police, emergency. I did not know if the message would go through. I did not know if Theo would even be awake to see it, but it was the only backup plan I had. I heard the front door crash open. Heavy boots stomped into my house. Flashlight beams swept across the walls. Men were shouting commands at each other. They were searching room by room. It would only be seconds before they reached the back of the house. "We have to go now," I whispered to Declan. We slipped out the back door and into the yard. The grass was wet and cold under my bare feet. I had not thought to grab shoes. I had not thought to grab anything except my phone. Declan was limping beside me, struggling to keep up. Whatever they had done to him before he reached my door had hurt him badly. We reached the tree line and pushed into the woods. Branches scratched my arms and face. The ground was uneven and covered with wet leaves. I could barely see where I was going, but I kept moving forward. Behind us, I heard shouting. The men had found the open back door. They knew we had run. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness behind us. They were coming. They were fast. And we had nowhere left to hide. We ran deeper into the woods, with branches whipping against our skin and roots trying to trip us with every step. I could hear the men behind us crashing through the trees. Their flashlights swept back and forth like searchlights hunting for prey. They were shouting to each other, coordinating their movements, spreading out to cover more ground. They were not going to give up. Declan was struggling to keep up. His breathing was ragged and heavy. Whatever injuries he had suffered before reaching my door were slowing him down. I grabbed his arm and pulled him forward, refusing to let him fall behind. If we stopped now, we were dead. I knew these woods. I had walked these trails dozens of times during daylight hours, but everything looked different in the darkness. The trees that felt friendly during the day now looked like shadowy figures waiting to grab us. The paths I knew so well had disappeared into a maze of black shapes and strange sounds. We reached a large fallen tree covered in moss and dead leaves. I pulled Declan down behind it, and we pressed ourselves into the cold, wet ground. I covered my mouth with my hand to muffle my breathing. Declan did the same. We lay there in the mud and the darkness, listening to the men get closer. I could hear their voices now. They were talking on radios, giving each other updates on their positions. They sounded calm and professional. They sounded like men who had done this before. One of them said they had found footprints heading north. Another said to check near the creek. They were closing in on us from multiple directions. Declan leaned close to my ear and whispered so quietly I could barely hear him. "There is something else I did not tell you. The evidence I found was not just about drug money. I found proof of a murder. A local businessman named Gerald Hansen threatened to expose the operation 2 years ago. They killed him and made it look like a car accident. The medical examiner who signed off on the death is one of the men hunting us right now." My blood went cold. These men were not just criminals. They were murderers. They had killed before, and they would kill again without hesitation. Declan and I were nothing to them, just loose ends that needed to be cut. I closed my eyes and prayed that my message had reached Theo. I prayed that he had woken up and seen it. I prayed that he had called the FBI like I asked. It felt like such a small hope against everything that was happening around us. Then I heard something new, a distant sound that grew louder by the second, the rhythmic chopping of helicopter blades cutting through the night air. I looked up through the trees and saw lights in the sky, bright lights that were not flashlights, lights that were sweeping across the forest from above. A voice boomed through a megaphone somewhere in the distance. "This is the FBI. Everyone on the ground. Put down your weapons and surrender immediately." The men who had been hunting us stopped moving. I could hear confusion in their voices. They had not expected this. They thought they were operating in the shadows with no one watching. They thought they had time to find us and disappear before anyone knew what happened. More voices joined the chaos. Federal agents were moving through the woods from multiple directions. They were organized and efficient, and they outnumbered the fake cops significantly. I heard someone shout for the men to get on the ground. I heard the sounds of a struggle followed by the click of handcuffs. Declan and I stayed behind the fallen tree, too afraid to move. Minutes passed that felt like hours. Then a flashlight found us, and a voice called out in a calm, professional tone. "Ren Holloway? Declan Marsh? I am Agent Torres with the FBI. You are safe now. Please come with me." I looked at Declan. His face was covered in mud and blood, but for the first time all night, he was not shaking. The terror in his eyes had been replaced by something that looked like relief. We helped each other stand on trembling legs and walk toward the agents. As we emerged from the woods, I saw the fake cops being led away in handcuffs. One of them was still wearing his police uniform. I recognized his face from around town. He was a deputy at the local sheriff's department, a man I had seen at the grocery store, a man I would have trusted without question if he had knocked on my door. My message had reached Theo. He had called the FBI immediately. The agents told me they had already been monitoring the situation because they knew Declan's location had been compromised. My text gave them the exact confirmation they needed to move in. We were alive. Against all odds, we had survived the night. The rest of that night passed in, a blur of flashing lights and questions. Federal agents wrapped blankets around our shoulders and led us out of the woods to waiting vehicles. Declan was taken to a hospital to treat his injuries. I was driven to the FBI field office to give my statement. I sat in a small room with beige walls and fluorescent lights and told them everything that had happened from the moment Declan knocked on my door. My brother Theo arrived at the field office around 5 in the morning. He had driven 2 hours in the middle of the night without stopping. When he saw me, he ran across the room and wrapped his arms around me so tight I could barely breathe. He kept saying he almost did not check his phone. He almost slept through my message. If he had ignored that notification for even another hour, things might have ended very differently. I held on to him and cried. All the fear and adrenaline I had been holding inside finally came pouring out. I cried for the terror of that night. I cried for how close I had come to dying. I cried because I was alive and safe, and my brother was there with me. The FBI investigation moved quickly after that night. The arrests in the woods were just the beginning. Over the following weeks, federal agents rounded up everyone connected to the trafficking operation. 3 local officials were charged with corruption. 5 members of law enforcement were arrested for their involvement. The deputy I had seen being led away in handcuffs turned out to be the one who leaked Declan's location. He had been feeding information to the criminals for years. The murder Declan had uncovered was reopened as well. Gerald Hansen's death was reclassified from an accident to a homicide. His family finally got the answers they had been seeking for 2 years. The medical examiner who had covered up the murder was arrested and charged as an accessory. Justice was slow, but it was coming for all of them. Declan spent a week in the hospital recovering from his injuries. He had 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and cuts that needed stitches. The men had caught him outside his house that night and beaten him badly before he managed to escape. He ran to my door because it was the closest place he could think of. He told me later that he almost did not knock. He almost kept running because he did not want to put me in danger. But he was losing blood and losing strength, and he had no other choice. I visited him in the hospital on the 3rd day. He looked better than he had that night, but he still looked tired and worn down. He thanked me for trusting him when I had every reason not to. He said most people would have opened the door for the fake police. Most people would have let fear make their decisions for them. But I listened to my instincts, and it saved both of our lives. The trauma of that night did not disappear easily. I had nightmares for months afterward. I would wake up in a cold sweat hearing pounding on my door that was not really there. I installed a security system in my house with cameras and motion sensors. I started keeping my phone next to my bed every night with emergency numbers ready to dial. The feeling of safety I had enjoyed for 3 years was gone, and I did not know if it would ever come back. But slowly, I started to heal. I went to therapy every week and talked through everything that happened. I leaned on Theo and called him more often than just Sundays. I reconnected with friends I had been keeping at a distance and let them support me. Declan moved back to the neighborhood after the investigation wrapped up. He did not have to hide anymore. The people who wanted him dead were behind bars, and his testimony had helped put them there. He and I became real friends after everything we went through. We had dinner together once a week. We talked about our lives and our fears and our hopes for the future. We were bonded by the worst night of our lives, and that bond turned into something meaningful. 6 months later, I was sitting on my front porch watching the sunset. The air was warm, and the trees were green, and the neighborhood was quiet. Declan walked over from his house and sat beside me without saying a word. We did not need to talk about that night anymore. We just sat together in the peace we had fought so hard to keep. Sometimes danger wears a uniform. Sometimes it carries a badge and speaks with authority. The world teaches us to trust those symbols without question. But your instincts know things your mind cannot explain. That quiet voice inside you that says something is wrong deserves to be heard. I trusted that voice on the worst night of my life, and it saved me. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done if a stranger showed up at your door, being chased by people dressed as police. I read every single comment, and I love hearing from you. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, trust your gut, and never let anyone make you doubt what you know to be true.